They dragged her deep into the bush, bleeding and half conscious, tied her to a tree like bait, smeared her with rotting meat, and left her for the predators, where the jungle could finish what they started. No weapon, no radio, no chance, just blood, rot, and the sound of something circling in the brush. But what they didn't know, she wasn't some desk analyst who stumbled into the wrong briefing. She was a Navy SEAL. And while they walked away laughing, thinking the jungle would eat her alive, she turned their hunting ground into her battlefield. So, before we show you how she made the men who left her beg for a way out, smash that subscribe button with the bell icon turned on, and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Because this isn't just survival, this is what happens when the wild learns who really owns it. The air didn't move, it just sat there, thick, wet, rotting from the inside. The kind of heat that didn't come from the sun. It rose from the ground, from leaves piled 3 feet deep, from things that had died weeks ago and never stopped decomposing. Every breath tasted like rust and mildew. The canopy overhead trapped it all like a lid on a pot nobody wanted to open. Lieutenant Commander Kara Ellison was on her knees in the mud, arms wrenched behind her back, zip-tied so tight her fingers had gone numb an hour ago. Blood ran in a slow line from her left temple, past her jaw, soaking into the collar of her torn fatigues. Her right boot was gone. The other sank halfway into black muck that smelled like death. 5 men stood around her, not soldiers, locals, militia hired by the cartel to babysit shipments in the deep bush, probably paid in powder and American bills. 2 had rifles. 1 wore a machete on his hip. The one they called El Rey had mirrored sunglasses, which was stupid this far under the trees. But he liked them, liked the way his own face looked in them. 3 days, one muttered in Spanish. She hasn't said a word, not one. El Rey nudged her chin up with his boot. That's because her brain's the only thing worth keeping. They'd tried everything. Locked her in a shipping container with a diesel generator screaming inches from her head. Waterboarded her with rainwater scooped from a barrel. Kept her awake under halogen lamps till her eyelids cracked and bled. She hadn't spoken. Not a name, not a rank, not even a curse, so they changed tactics. One of them dragged a sack forward and dumped it at her feet. Rotting goat meat. Flies swarmed before it even hit the ground. "You know what eats at night out here?" he asked, grinning. Kara didn't move, didn't blink. They chained her to the trunk of a ceiba tree, arms still bound, ankles pulled so tight the steel bit into bone. Then they smeared the meat across her legs, her chest, her shoulders, laughing the whole time. "Jaguars come first," one said. "No, no, vultures, then the ants." El Rey leaned close. His breath smelled like cigarettes and something sour. "By morning," he said in English, "nothing left but bones." He said it slow, wanted her to understand. Then they walked away. No final words, no mercy shot, just boots crunching through wet leaves, voices fading into the buzz of insects and the rustle of things she couldn't see. And then, silence. No food, no water, no way out. Kara closed her eyes, felt the chain tighten as her body sagged forward. The blood under her nails was hers. So was the mud caked to her knees, the sweat rolling down her ribs, but the fear, that didn't belong to her. She counted the links in the chain. 14. The zip tie had ridges, 4 per inch. The tree bark was soft near the base, harder higher up. The sun sat low in the west, maybe 2 hours from setting. Wind came from the south, smelled like water. Every detail mattered. Every variable was a thread, because she wasn't some field tech who got grabbed by accident. She was a Navy SEAL, DevGru trained, echo clearance, and she'd survived worse than this in Panama, where they dropped her in a dead zone with 1 canteen and a dull knife for 3 weeks. That was training. This was just Tuesday. And she hadn't come back to the jungle to die. She'd come back to win. Time didn't tick in the jungle. It crawled. Through vines, through sweat, through the space between breaths. Kara knew that if she didn't control her body now, the heat would do it for her. Panic meant faster breathing. Faster breathing meant dehydration. And out here, the jungle didn't kill with claws. It killed with time, so she slowed everything down. Her breath first, shallow, steady, not too slow. Mosquitoes tracked stillness, then her posture, let her shoulders sag, her head droop. Gave them the image they wanted if they were still watching through binoculars from some ridge. Limp. Broken. Done. They were gone now. But the habit had bought her minutes. She wasn't going to waste them. She tested the chain. Steel. Standard shackle, looped twice around the tree and locked at the back. The zip ties were industrial grade, milky white, dug so deep into her wrists the skin had split. Her legs were free, though, smeared in gore, stung by fire ants, but mobile. She flexed her left boot. Still there. She felt for the seam along the arch, the place where the stitching was doubled. Weeks ago, before deployment, she'd melted a sliver of titanium into the lining. An old trick from her instructor in Panama. "Your blade isn't what you carry," he'd said. "It's what they never check." It was barely longer than her thumb, sharp enough to split paracord, fragile if you stepped wrong. But she hadn't stepped wrong, not once. She leaned back, wrists screaming as the plastic dug deeper, and angled her boot toward her fingers. Missed, tried again. Her shoulder socket popped. She ignored it. Third try, contact. The edge of the blade scraped plastic. The sound was nothing, but to her it was the loudest thing in the jungle. She adjusted her grip, slowed her breathing, and started cutting. Every stroke deliberate, every angle calculated. The zip tie bit deeper with each pull. But the friction was working. She could feel it. Don't rush. Friction is your friend. Sweat dripped into her eyes. Her wrists went numb. Her forearms trembled, but she didn't stop. Birds shrieked overhead. Something hissed behind the tree. She didn't look, just kept cutting. 30 minutes, maybe more. Then, snap, the plastic gave. Her hands came free like they'd been held underwater and finally broke the surface. She let her arms drop forward, slow, working blood back into her fingers. They burned. She rolled her wrists in tight circles, shook them out, then slid her boot off and pried the blade loose. Still sharp, still hers. She knelt beside the tree and scooped mud with both hands, thick, black, wet, spread it across her thighs, her chest, anywhere they'd marked her with meat. The mud would dull the scent, mask the blood, buy her a few more hours before something with teeth came looking. The sun had dropped lower now. Light came in thin, sickly bars through the leaves. The air thickened but didn't cool. Crickets started their chorus. Predators hunted at dusk. She knew that. She'd trained for it in Panama, left alone in a dead zone, with one canteen and a broken compass. 3 weeks, 1 cracked rib, 3 kills. That was training. This was real. She gripped the blade in her right hand, crouched low, and slipped into the brush. Behind her, the chain clinked softly against the tree trunk, like a ghost reminding her she shouldn't be alive. But Kara Ellison didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in skill. And the jungle was about to remember her name. The jungle changed after dark. What had been humid and heavy during the day became wet and watchful at night. The leaves didn't rustle from wind, they moved like something breathing. Shadows didn't fall. They circled, and everything that had been hiding before came out to feed. Kara moved low, blade gripped reverse in her right hand, mud still drying on her skin. Every step was deliberate. Heel first, then toe, weight distributed. Her thigh throbbed where the restraints had cut deep, but pain was just another sensor. If she could feel it, she could still move. She'd gone maybe a mile when she smelled it. Low, pungent, rot mixed with musk. Not the men, something older. The ground ahead dipped into a hollow, thick with vines and moss that stayed cool even in midday heat. She stopped, listened. Silence. Then a crunch behind her. Slow, deliberate, too heavy for monkeys, too measured for boars. She turned. Nothing. But her body had already shifted. Instinct. The smell returned, heavier now. Her left hand found a thick branch. Her eyes adjusted to the dark. 10 feet away. 2 eyes. Low, wide apart, reflecting nothing. Jaguar. It stepped out from behind a fallen trunk. Muscles rolling under spotted fur, movement like water poured slow, no roar, no snarl, just a low chuff of breath. Kara didn't move. She remembered the instructor's voice from Panama. You don't run from kings, you stand until they blink. Predators respected posture, stillness, vertical mass. Running made you prey. She shifted her weight, spreading her stance, making herself taller, kept the blade low but visible, breathing even. No blink. The jaguar stepped forward, paused silent, head low. Testing. Young, she thought, curious, not starving, just seeing if she'd break. She glanced at the forest floor. Dry vine, old bark, a slick of sap from a broken limb, resin, flammable. Her hand moved to her waistband, found the pocket lighter hanging by a cord, waterproof. Back up! She struck it once, a flicker of flame, then she touched it to the sap. The bark caught, a thin line of fire spreading fast. The jaguar froze. Kara didn't charge, didn't threaten, just held the burning branch like a torch, eyes locked on the animals. The fire didn't need to be big, just enough to prove she wasn't afraid. The jaguar circled left, then right, then backed into the shadows, gone. Kara stood alone, smoke curling from the branch in her hand. She let the fire burn out. Didn't waste it. Just looked into the blackness where the jaguar had vanished and whispered under her breath, "You're not the only thing that hunts out here." The vines ahead parted with a gust of wind, almost like an answer, and she walked straight through. By morning, the humidity had sharpened into something cruel. Kara's uniform clung to her like a second skin, soaked through with condensation that dripped endlessly from the canopy. Her thigh was stiff, muscle inflamed where the cut had deepened overnight. She tied a vine tourniquet high and loose, enough to slow the bleeding, not stop circulation. She followed tracks, not footprints. Those vanished too fast. She watched for broken stalks, disturbed leaves, boot scuffs against root bark. The militia hadn't been careful dragging her out here. They'd assumed she wouldn't walk back. Big mistake. She moved low, knees bent, weight shifting shadow to shadow, always listening, always checking the wind. The terrain changed as she pushed east. Ground softened, water pooled near a downed log. She crouched and split a stalk of wild bamboo with her blade. Inside it bled clean, filtered water. She pressed her lips to the hollow and drank slow, ignoring the cramps. Panama all over again. Then came the hiss. She froze. 2 meters away, coiled against the mud, lay a fer-de-lance, thick as a rifle barrel, tongue flicking, eyes fixed. Kara didn't move, didn't blink. The jungle had a rule. Respect it, and it gave space. Rush it, and it bit back. Slowly, she shifted her right foot backward, left arm behind her, and stepped wide in a silent arc around the nest. The hiss faded. She exhaled. An hour later, she found it. A clearing. Not open, just less tangled. Tire marks pressed into mud, faded but fresh. The smell of fuel clung to the bark. Behind a curtain of vines, a shape emerged. Metal. She crouched, eyes narrowing. A makeshift landing zone. Barely cleared. Just enough for a bush plane to skim in, drop cargo, and vanish. Crates stacked under camouflage netting. Footprints everywhere. Tripwires on the west side, sloppy. 2 sentries half asleep near a radio tower. Kara's pulse slowed. This wasn't just a drug waypoint. This was an arms hub. She belly crawled behind a rotted log and inspected the nearest crate through the gaps. The label read, "Medical Supplies, Peru Ministry." But the weight was wrong. Too dense. She used the blade tip to lift the tarp edge. Inside, rifles, U.S. military, sealed in foam, serial numbers scratched off. Some still had QR tags, half burned. How the hell did they get these? She lowered the tarp and froze. Footsteps. Close. 2 men approaching from the north side, talking low in Spanish. One laughed, the other lit a cigarette. They were doing a perimeter check, lazy but routine. Kara pressed herself flat against the mud, blade ready, controlling her breathing. The men stopped maybe 15 feet away. One kicked at the base of a crate. The other pissed against a tree. "El Rey says we move the shipment tomorrow," one muttered. "Dock coordinates changed again. 3rd time this month. Paranoid bastard. He's got reason. That American they caught? Intel officer. If she talked to anyone before we grabbed her, she didn't talk, and she's dead now. Jungle took care of it." They laughed, finished, walked off. Kara stayed motionless for another 60 seconds, then slipped back into the brush. Her heart hammered, but her hands stayed steady. She'd just confirmed 3 things. 1, the shipment was moving tomorrow. 2, they thought she was dead. 3, they were scared someone might already know. That meant she had leverage. She just needed a way to use it. She circled the camp's perimeter for another hour, mapping every blind spot, every rotation, every vulnerability. Then she found what she needed. A supply shack near the eastern edge. No guards, just a rusted padlock. She snapped it with a rock and slipped inside. Satellite phone, older model but functional, battery at 40%. She checked the signal. Weak, but there. This was it. Her shot. But if she powered it on now, they'd detect the transmission spike. She needed a distraction first. Something loud enough to pull attention away from their monitoring equipment. She scanned the shack. Fuel canisters, a toolbox, coils of wire, and, in the corner, a flare gun. She pocketed 2 flares, memorized the sat phone's frequency, and backed out the way she came. She wasn't calling for help yet. First, she'd make them think the jungle was closing in. Then, when they were scattered and blind with fear, she'd light up every frequency command was monitoring. She lowered the tarp and backed into the shadows. This wasn't local trafficking. This was international diversion. Military-grade weapons routed through cartel intermediaries, disguised as medical shipments, and whoever ran it had tried to throw her to the jungle to keep it quiet. She tightened the cord on her leg, stared through the leaves, and made her decision. I'm not running. I'm turning this jungle into a trap. Kara spent the rest of the day becoming the jungle. She moved beneath the canopy in silence, collecting what she needed: vines for tripwire, saplings for stakes, sticks sharpened and baked over coals to harden their tips. Every step she took erased the one before. No trail, no scent, no sound, just the growing sense of something watching. It wasn't superstition. It was tactics. She knew how militia thought. She'd spent years in their shadows, intercepting comms, studying patterns. And the one thing they all feared more than soldiers was the idea of something unseen picking them off. That's exactly what she'd become. By nightfall, she'd mapped their patrol loops. 2 men circled every 30 minutes, armed but careless. They didn't look up. They never did. She set her first snare between 2 trees, angled for an ankle catch. The second was deeper in, a spike pit she disguised with leaves and mud, not deep enough to kill, just enough to make someone scream loud enough to terrify the others. When she finished, she rubbed charcoal from burned bark across her face and arms, breaking up her outline. The knife was now tied to a stick. Primitive spear, backup. The original shard stayed tucked against her wrist with gauze stripped from her shirt. Then she waited. It didn't take long. The first scream came just past midnight. Raw, wet, followed by snapping wood and shouting in Spanish. Then silence, then rustling, then gunfire. Panicked, wild, pointless. Kara crouched behind a tree, watching one of the militia stumble toward camp, bleeding from the thigh, eyes wide with terror. He screamed something about La Selva Maldita, the cursed jungle. The others shouted back, confused. 2 ran out to find him. They never made it back. Not because she killed them, because she made them afraid to go farther. She crept closer to camp, watching from high in a kiba tree. The sentries no longer slept. They paced with rifles pointed inward, not out. Lights flicked on and off. Radios crackled. Someone muttered the word bruja, witch. Good. The legend would do half the work. She waited until the wind shifted, then used a whistle made from a hollow reed. Sharp, piercing, high-pitched. Mimicked a bird call that didn't exist. Once, then twice. The next thing she heard was a rifle clatter to the dirt. Someone ran. Another followed. They were unraveling. She didn't smile. She just whispered to herself, "They want fear? I'll give them doctrine." Because this wasn't vengeance. This was operational control. And Kara Ellison was about to take the whole camp apart without firing a shot. Rain came just before dawn. It didn't fall. It slammed. Thick sheets that turned the ground into soup. The kind of storm that swallowed footfalls and erased shapes. Perfect cover. Kara moved through the outer brush like a shadow, the jungle painting her in its colors. Her hands were raw. Her clothes hung in rags, but her eyes were locked forward, on the glow of floodlights leaking through tarp edges and the low hum of a generator straining against the storm. The camp was smaller than it seemed from afar. A handful of huts made from sheet metal and wood, crates still hidden under netting. Most of the militia had retreated under awnings. A few still patrolled, more aggressive now, more erratic. But they were watching the perimeter, not above. Kara scaled the tree nearest the comms tent and dropped low onto the corrugated roof. She timed it between thunderclaps. The rain muffled her landing. Inside, voices argued over a crackling radio. "She's dead, I told you." "Then who's setting traps?" "Animals, the jungle's full of—" "No animal carries a knife." Kara sliced a vertical line down the back of the tent with her blade, slipped in silent. Her eyes found the equipment first. Radio station, signal amplifier, satellite link, American-made. Then the men. 3 of them, rifles slung, backs to her. She acted without hesitation. First strike, knife handle to the skull of the closest man. He dropped before the others registered movement. Second, she kicked the rifle out of the next one's hands and rammed his head into the metal pole. The third reached for his sidearm. Too late. She had him by the collar. "Drop it." He froze, then obeyed. She zip-tied his wrists with the same brand they'd used on her, gagged him, cut the radio. Outside, shouting erupted. Someone had seen movement. Fine, she didn't need clean. She grabbed the signal amplifier and shoved it into her pack. On the table, a map, flight routes, dock locations, coordinates. She rolled it, tucked it into a watertight pouch, and sprinted out through the slit she'd made. The camp was chaos now. Men shouted. Flashlights cut through rain and mist. One of the trucks roared to life, headlights flaring. Kara ducked behind crates marked Medicamento and sliced the tarp open. Grenade launchers. "American again!" A voice barked from the center tent. One she recognized. El Rey. He was still here, still in charge. She moved low, fast, flanking the tent, slipped under the back flap. Found him with one guard inside, pacing near documents. "You said she wouldn't make it." She didn't. She couldn't have. Kara stepped out of the shadows. "You should have bet money on it." The guard spun, too slow. She slammed the knife butt into his throat and caught his rifle as he dropped. El Rey turned, reaching for his pistol. Froze. His sunglasses were gone. His eyes were wide. "You're alive," she cut in. "And really done being quiet." She backed him against the wall with the rifle raised. El Rey's face shifted, shock melting into something uglier, calculation. He raised both hands slowly, that smugness creeping back in. "You think you've won something here? You think anyone cares about one officer in the jungle?" Kara didn't answer, just kept the rifle steady. "You know how many people are involved in this?" He continued, voice gaining confidence. "Generals, politicians, people with actual power. You're nothing. A ghost they'll erase from every file." She tilted her head slightly. "You talk a lot for someone who's about to lose everything." His jaw tightened. "I'm offering you a deal. You walk away, we pay you double whatever the Navy does. New identity, clean passport, you disappear, we disappear. Everyone wins." Kara let the silence sit for a moment. Let him think he had a chance. Then she glanced at the documents on the table, shipping manifests, coordinates, names. She picked one up with her free hand. "Read it." Her expression didn't change, but something cold settled behind her eyes. "You didn't just run guns," she said quietly. "You moved them through aid routes, medical convoys, refugee shipments." El Rey shrugged. "Business is business. You hid weapons in trucks carrying medicine to people who had nothing left. They got their medicine. We got our profit. Nobody lost." Kara looked at him for a long moment. Then she lowered the rifle slightly, just enough for him to think she was considering it. His shoulders relaxed. "Big mistake." "Here's my counteroffer," she said. "You're going to call your supply contact, and you're going to give them one last shipment manifest. Every detail, every name, every route. Now." El Rey's face hardened. "And if I don't?" She chambered around and stepped closer. "Then I don't need you alive. I just need the radio." He stared at her, saw no bluff, no hesitation, Just cold, operational certainty. His hand moved toward the radio. Slowly. He grabbed it, and Kara listened as the man who ordered her death read out every dirty secret he'd hidden for 6 months. When he finished, she took the mic. This is Lieutenant Commander Kara Ellison, Echo Clearance. Location confirmed. Hostile trafficking hub compromised. Requesting extraction and armed backup. Coordinates transmitting now. She tied El Rey to the metal pole with both hands zip-tied above his head. He spat blood and sneered. You think this jungle saved you? Kara stepped back into the storm. No, she said. I saved the jungle from you. The jungle didn't stay quiet for long. 10 minutes after transmission, the horizon lit up, faint flashes behind the trees like lightning with purpose. Kara crouched at the far edge of camp, rifle propped against her shoulder, scanning through the downpour. The rain hadn't let up. It came harder now, flooding the ground, turning dirt to sludge. She'd moved El Rey into the comms tent and tied his ankles to the cot frame, left the mic live, just enough for command to catch any bursts of intel. That's when she heard it. Truck engines, coming fast, not from the south, from the north. Cartel reinforcements. She saw the headlights first, cutting between trunks in wide arcs, then tires grinding over root and rock. No military convoy moved that fast. These weren't friendlies. She didn't run. She went to work. Within seconds, she'd rearmed the traps near the perimeter, reset the spike pit, retightened the tripwire, planted a flare charge in the east corner, angled to blind anyone advancing through the brush. Then she posted up. 2 trucks broke through the foliage, modified Hilux pickups, reinforced bumpers, gunners in the beds. She took the first shot clean. Driver's side, windshield shattered, the truck veered, clipped a tree, flipped. The gunner was flung clear. The second truck braked hard. Too late. Back wheels caught her spike trap, popping both tires. The engine stalled. Men spilled out, shouting, firing blind into the jungle. Kara shifted position, stayed low, returned fire, controlled bursts. 3 down. 2 staggered behind crates, returning fire in panic sprays. Then the flare ignited. A cone of fire and smoke lit up the east quarter. Rain hissed against it, steam rising in plumes. The cartel fighters shouted over each other, dazed. That's when the jungle roared. A new sound, deep, mechanical, rotors. Kara's eyes snapped up. Through breaks in the canopy, a silhouette emerged. An MH-60. No lights, no warning. She stood, raised both arms, fired 3 quick bursts toward the sky, signal pattern, then dropped back down. The cartel fighters saw it too. Some broke ranks and ran. A voice crackled over Kara's earpiece. Echo actual, this is Talon 2. Visual confirmed. Fast rope in 60. Kara keyed her mic. East clearing compromised. Recommend west side insert. Hostile scattered, not organized. Repeat, not organized. Copy. You have control. Mark targets. The helicopter banked and dropped. Ropes uncoiled. Dark figures slid down. SEALs in full gear, faces painted, weapons tight. Kara emerged from cover. West line, push them north, she shouted. Crates under tarps, priority intel, radio tent secure, El Rey in custody. One SEAL gave a sharp nod and peeled off toward the comm shack. Another handed her a fresh magazine. You're Ellison? He asked over the gunfire. She nodded once, reloading. Command thought you were KIA. She slammed the mag in and chambered around. So did they. Gunfire rattled from the tree line as cartel remnants made a final push, but the SEALs were already inside, clearing huts, sweeping crates, forcing surrenders. The night pulsed with shouted orders and radio calls. El Rey screamed from inside the tent as a SEAL dragged him out in cuffs. Paris! You don't know who I work for! Kara stepped forward, rifle lowered. You work for ghosts, she said, and ghosts don't scare the jungle. The last shots faded. Rain poured, smoke rose from 2 burning vehicles, and in the clearing, under the watchful eye of the canopy, the SEALs formed a perimeter. Kara walked through them. Shoulders squared, boots sloshing through mud. Someone called from the radio. Crates are tagged. Manifest confirmed. Airlift incoming. The operation was over, but the jungle wasn't done yet. The fire hissed in the rain, but it didn't go out. Bits of tarp and paper crackled where the storm couldn't reach, casting flickers across the shredded clearing. The The SEALs moved methodically, tagging crates, securing evidence, zip-tying what was left of the militia to trees until transport arrived. Kara sat on the tailgate of one of the downed Hilux trucks, helmet off, hair soaked and clinging to her jaw. Her uniform was streaked in charcoal and blood, mud ground into every seam. But her eyes were clear. The team leader, a broad-shouldered operator with a scar across his temple, approached and offered her a foil blanket. She didn't take it. "You the one who called it in?" he asked. She nodded. Beacon was inside their comms gear, hid an amplifier under the desk. They didn't even know they were broadcasting. He shook his head, impressed. "You were out here 2 nights? Alone?" Kara wiped a streak of ash from her cheek. "Technically, I had company." He looked confused. She glanced toward the trees. "The jungle." The team leader let out a low whistle. "How'd you survive out here? No team, no food, no cover." She looked up at the canopy, rain falling in slow sheets through the leaves. "They thought the jungle would kill me," she said quietly. "But the jungle listens to who it respects." Behind them, El Rey was still cursing in Spanish as 2 SEALs hoisted him into a holding sling. His boots scraped against the mud. His shirt was half torn, his pride completely gone. He caught Kara's eye, just for a moment. She didn't say a word, but he looked away first. The helicopters returned just as the horizon began to pale. Sunlight broke in thin bars through the trees. The rotor wash sent ash flying, kicked water into the air. A cable lowered beside her. The team leader gestured. "After you?" Kara nodded once, gripped the cable, and as she lifted off the ground, legs trailing, arms locked in the harness, she looked down at the jungle one last time. Still burning, still alive, still watching. Could you survive 2 nights in the jungle with nothing but your training and your will to live? And what would you fear more? The predators hiding in the wild or the men who left you there on purpose? Let us know in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story kept your pulse up, do me a favor. Tap that like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to ring the bell icon so you never miss a mission like this. Share this video with someone who still thinks Navy SEALs only fight on open ground. Because when the jungle turns against you, they're the last shadow you'll ever see. Watch the next story already on screen, and I'll see you tomorrow, same time, with a brand new mission.